Hi, everyone. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're joining us from. We'll just take a moment to allow more people to connect, and then we can begin. And as you're joining, of course, if you'd like to put on your cameras, you're more than welcome to. We'd love to see you and have you as part of our community, as part of this session today. Of course, we'll run through some of the housekeeping items of MS Teams webinar when more people join. Okay, we'll get started. More people will hopefully keep joining, but for those who have just joined now, a really warm welcome to you, and thank you so much for your time, for taking the time to be here. Welcome to the UN Library Archives Geneva. My name is Natalie, and it's really a pleasure to welcome you today for this session as we mark International Archives Week. And while, of course, the official week starts next week on the 9th of June, we're getting in early as part of the program of events and discussions that are happening as part of this year's theme, which, as you know, is Archives Are Accessible. And many of you who have registered to join us today, we know you're part of the archival community or you're interested in libraries and documents. And so we're sure that this is also something that's close to your hearts and the work that you do. It's definitely close to the work that my colleagues here are doing on our archival collections. And so today we wanted to share with you, but also discuss with you if you have any questions, how we're working to overcome the different types of challenges in accessing the UN Archives Geneva collections. So before we jump right in, we would like to let you know that this session is being recorded, so it can be shared with everyone who registered for the session. So please be aware it will be recorded, but purely for the purposes of sharing it with you afterwards, or perhaps for you to share with your colleagues who couldn't come today. So if you're new to MS Teams webinar, there are a few little buttons that are useful for you. There is a chat button which we've activated. If you have any technical questions for us or need support, we've got our colleague here, Nivert, behind the scenes who'll be able to help you if you need. We've also got a Q&A button. There will be time for questions and answers after our presentations today, so please don't hesitate to put your questions there. There's also the option, though, to raise your hand, and we're very happy to, if you would like to if you prefer to ask your question in person, verbally, so please don't hesitate. Either way is completely fine for us. We also know that you're joining us from different organizations, different institutions. So we'd like to just take a moment to firstly know a little bit more about you. You'll see here on the screen a little poll. There's two questions, which you can answer both at the same time. So firstly, we'd love to know where you're joining us from. You can answer with a city, a university, an institution. Let's see where you're coming from. And once you've answered that one or entered your response, there is a little arrow at the bottom of the poll to flip to the next question, the second question. And we also wanted to ask you if you'd like to reflect on what this year's theme means to you. So archives are accessible, particularly in the context of archives themselves. Is it something that does it mean to you something more physical, that you would like to access the archives to be able to see them for your research? Does it mean having access to them virtually anywhere you are in the world? Is it a copyright issue? Maybe it's something else entirely. You're welcome to put in one word or just a few words that spring to mind in terms of what this year's theme means to you. And then, of course, once you've entered, we can take a look at everyone's responses. So I'll go ahead also and put in my response. And while we're doing that, I'll just take a little bit of time to introduce you to our colleagues. I'll introduce formally our speakers today in just a moment. We've got Danielle and Armin with us, but also behind the scenes is Nivert. We're all based here at the UN Library Archives Geneva, and it's a pleasure to be with you today. Okay, so we will see how everyone's doing. We've got a few responses coming in. Please don't hesitate. Keep bringing in your responses. Fantastic to see it. So some of you are here with us at UN Geneva, Geneva, Paris, the ICRC, France, Vienna. Don't hesitate if you'd like to keep sharing. There we go. Austria. Awesome. Okay. We'll leave this open a little bit longer and we'll move over to what does this year's theme mean to you? Nona, thank you in the chat. You're coming from Prague. Big welcome to you as well. Okay, so what does this year's theme mean to you? We've got here the biggest meaning archives, so making sure, I guess, they're all accessible. UN agencies is there, electronic, the word transparency is coming up, new research, user friendliness, engagement and education, physical access to the archives is there as well, making them public. What else have we got? Digitally, so I guess meaning virtually there. Human rights is coming up, tools for archives is also there, making them available for digitalization is also there. Okay. We hope, Danielle and Hermine, some of those responses are useful for you as we get along. But it's good to see that so many of you are coming from different areas, looking mostly at Europe here, but hopefully we've also got some colleagues coming from other areas as well. Thank you so much for participating. That's great to know. Okay. Now, before I hand you over to our expert speakers, just a brief introduction to our library and archives for those who are not so aware of our institution. It was founded, as you can see on the screen, in 1919 as the Library of the League of Nations. And then following a donation from John D. Rockefeller Jr., the library was built with the idea that it would not just be a center for information and knowledge for the Secretariat of the League, but also as a center for research and international understanding and the study of international questions. And this is still one of our roles today. We're now the UN Library Archives Geneva, and we're composed of a library services section as well as an institutional memory section where the archives sit and the records management sit, and where we'll be focusing our time today. So introducing you to our program, you can see here we're going to be looking at introducing you to our collections, our unique collections, and there are 5 archives categories that we'll run through. We'll also present a demo of the UN Archives Geneva platform, where many of the documents and archives that we hold are made accessible to you virtually. And then, of course, we're going to look at some of the key barriers we've faced in improving access to the collections. And there are a few different areas there. And so we hope this will be useful for you, perhaps in your own institutions as well. And then look ahead to what's next and the challenges that still remain. So that's enough from me. There will be time for Q&A afterwards, so please don't hesitate if you have any questions. It's a pleasure to pass you on now to our speakers. Today we have Hermine Diebo. She's the Chief of the Archives Management Unit, and also Danielle Hughes, Chief of the Records Management Unit, both in the institutional memory section. So Danielle and Hermine, thank you so much, and over to you.
Thank you, Natalie. So we're going to take a quick look at the 5 categories of archives that we hold. In total, we at UN Archives Geneva have more than 15 linear kilometers of physical records. We have the League of Nations archives, which date from 1919 to 1946, and which Hermine will give you a little bit of a better overview in the coming slides. We also have the archives of UN Geneva, and those are the entities that are here in Geneva and who have a footprint at the Palais. And a little bit later on in the presentation, I'll go into more detail. We also hold private papers, and these are from diplomats or peace activists, international figures, and we also have a couple of ex-UN staff members who have donated their papers to us upon retirement. The 4th category that we have is the international peace movements, and these are a set of archives that date from the 1870s until present, and they are a wide source of information to researchers today. And then the last category is a little bit of a miscellaneous one, the other categories. And this is where we've sort of clumped together the collections that we have. So the photograph collection, the posters collection. We also have a couple artifacts collections. And this is the pamphlet collection is also another one of them. All of these collections and fonds make up our shared global heritage, and preserving and ensuring access to them is really central to our mission today.
Thank you, Danielle. So let's start with one of these categories, which are the League of Nations archives. And this is a very highly diverse collection where we can find administrative records, but also official documents, conventions, and treaties. And also we have around 8,000 photographs, 15,000 maps. And this collection spans nearly 3 linear kilometers, approximately 14 million pages of unique documents from 1919 to 1946. And since 2009, the League of Nations Archives has been inscribed on the UNESCO Memory of the World Register. And this recognition, it's important because it highlights their global significance. because this archives offers really insight into the international landscape of the early 20th century and provide information on nearly every country during the interwar period, reflecting how the world was organized at that time. And this UNESCO register allow to emphasize on the importance of preserving the collection and ensuring universal access. And it also help to raise awareness, and this point we will see it later on. So now let's take a look at how we made this collection available online. So as of now, the League of Nations Archives is the only collection that is fully available online through our platform. And this was made possible thanks to the LONTAD project, which is the total digital access to the League of Nations Archives. This project was launched in 2017 and completed in 2022, and it was funded by a Swiss foundation. But of course, this LONTAD project was much more than just a digitization project. It's also focused on preserving physically the documents and also ensuring a long-term digital preservation. And finally, to provide free open online access to everyone. And to make that happen, this open access, we developed a digital platform to host the collection, and we will show it later on. To give you a sense of the scale of this project, nearly 12,000 archive boxes were digitized, and as part of the preservation, over 8,000 boxes were replaced. We created or updated more than 200,000 metadata, and the volume of the data was over 200 terabytes. And a last number and a fun fact, we manually removed around 1 ton of staples and other metallic parts, one by one. So with that, I will now hand it over to Daniel, who will take you through the UN Geneva archives.
Thank you, Hermine. So as I said before, we have got the archives of the institutions, UN, who have somewhat of a footprint here at the Palais des Nations. The main one that we'll start with is UNOG. So this is UN Geneva, and it's mostly mundane administrative records. It's a little embarrassing that we don't have anything more exciting at UN Geneva. It's mostly human resources, procurement, building management, and conference management. Those are the main functions that we do here at UNOG. The more exciting archives that we do hold are from OHCHR, the Human Rights Archives, and they go back to when the Division of Human Rights moved here from New York back in the late 70s. We also hold the archives of OCHA, so Humanitarian Affairs. There is a portion of their archives with us. The next two, UNCTAD, so UN Trade and Development, and UNECE, the Economic Commission for Europe, both of these entities were born here in Geneva and at the Palais. And we have an extensive collection from UN Trade and Development and ECE. And then the last one that is of note is Conference on Disarmament, which is based here in Geneva. We also have a variety of smaller fonds that are more internal. So for the UN people, the abbreviations will make sense. We have OIOS, so Internal Oversight. We have JIU, which is the Joint Investigative Unit. And maybe most importantly, we have the Joint Pension Fund archives here in Geneva. So the vast majority of the archives that we hold are in physical format. Unfortunately, at this time, we are still somewhat behind the times regarding digital archives and digital records produced here in Geneva. It is something that we are working towards getting a handle on and preserving. 2023 marked the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, so 1948. And this declaration has inspired and paved the way for the adoption of more than 70 human rights treaties on a global and regional level. The UNESCO Memory of the World nomination process, which started in 2023, was the perfect opportunity for us to highlight this suite of landmark documents, which set out the fundamental human rights that are to be universally protected. So the International Bill of Human Rights is made up of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and the third one I have totally blanked out on. I am so sorry. Those three bills are milestone documents. And for the first time in history, the fundamental rights of all people and of all nations are set out. We got the good news that in 2025, this collection of archives and UN official documents were also submitted into the UNESCO Memory of the World Register. The International Bill of Human Rights are available on our archives platform that Hermine will discuss in a little bit, as well as in New York with UN Arms, because it was a joint submission, as the records are in both locations.
Fantastic. Thank you, Danielle. We will take a moment now to ask you, before we go into the demo of the UN Archives Geneva platform, if you've heard about it. And there's no wrong answer here. We'd just like to take a pulse check to see, before we do the demo of our platform, have you already used the UN Archives Geneva platform? Yes, no, but I've heard about it, or no, I have not heard about it and not yet. So please let us know in the poll, and you can click submit once you've had your put in your selection of the three. Yes, so overwhelmingly 60% so far have already used it. Some have heard about it but not used it yet, and a few have not at all used it. So this is perfect. We're going to now take the time to do a little demo of the platform so you can see how you can use it also from wherever you are. Thanks for everyone for responding, and Hermine, over to you.
Thank you very much. Yes, it was interesting to see that pool. So here is the famous UN Archive Geneva platform. And this is a home page. And you will see that on the left, on the blue browse box, you will find the five archives categories that we mentioned earlier. The League of Nations, UN Geneva, Private Paper, International Peace Movement, and these additional collections. So let's take a look at the League of Nations archives category to start with. And here you will see that you have access to the fonts and collections, and we clearly indicate which material has been digitized or not, and which is available online or not. You will also find detailed description of each font and collections, along with, in some cases, additional archival material and additional resources. So let's say you want to explore the League of Nations Secretariat. You just have to click on the link to access the font. So the Secretariat was the executive organ of the League of Nations and play a central key role in the day-to-day operation. When you are inside each font, you will see that the font is presented with a tree-view structure, hierarchical structure, which reflects, in that case, the organization of the Secretariat. So the archives are arranged according to the administrative section that compose the Secretariat. For the example, let's take a look at the Intellectual Cooperation and International Bureau section. And I want to mention that if you go down for each fonts and subfonts in the context area section, you will find quite a lot of useful information that we try to provide to give you a sense of what you will find on each font or section. So in the highest level, you will find useful information, we hope, in the context area. So now, when you are in a section here, you will notice that there is a difference between registry files and section files, and that's a difference that you will find in each sections. So let me just mention what is this registry system, which was established at the beginning of the League of Nations based on the model on the British Foreign Office, because the first Secretary General of the League, Sir Eric Drummond, came from there, and implement registry service, which was responsible for recording all the documents received or produced by the League. So in this kind of registry files, you will find official letters, general correspondence, final report, and other formal documents. Even though all the documents were supposed to go through the registry, over time, some sections began to create their own files. And at the end, an administrative instruction required that those files were transferred to the archives, and now this became known as the section files. We can say that they are the non-registry files. And they are quite interesting for the researcher because they complement often what is in the registry files, because in the section file, you may find more draft reports, for instance, more press clipping that can give a good complement to what you will find in the registry file. I mention it because when you consult also the UN Geneva archives, you will find the same system because the UN at the beginning adopted also a registry system. We will see it in a minute. So now, since we are celebrating the International Archives Week, let's take a look and let's take an example in the intellectual cooperation section, because the idea behind intellectual cooperation was to promote peace and international understanding through education, research, and sharing knowledge. And this includes, of course, work in several aspects like moral disarmament, natural sciences, literature, bibliography, and of course, library and archives. And by the way, when the League of Nations was dissolved, the work of intellectual cooperation was taken over by UNESCO. And today, you will find some very fascinating archives material in the UNESCO archives in Paris, which expand and complement what we have here in Geneva. And maybe we have some colleagues from UNESCO today who are with us. So today, let's take an example on the archives, and let's take a look at this specific file on the preparation of an international archives guide. When you arrive at the level of the file you wish to consult, you just have to click on the thumbnail to open the file. You will need to accept the copyright notice, and then the file will come in the browser. Here is this example. As you can see, the quality of the digitization is excellent. It's very clear and easy to read. And in this specific file, we will find the correspondence related to a questionnaire that was circulated in the preparation for drafting the guide, which was eventually published in 1934. And it gives you a great behind-the-scene look at how international archival cooperation was starting to be shaped at that time. So now, let's take a look at the UN Geneva archives. With this house, you can go back to the home and you can enter to the next category, which are the UN Geneva archives. And here, you will see again what has been digitized or not. And as Daniel mentioned, you will see that some majority of a collection has not been described yet. So that's why you don't have any link to enter, but it can be consulted on site. And to have access to finding aids, you have to contact us. And at the bottom of each page, you will find this Ask an Archivist button, which allows you to go to a form that you can fill. And from that, we will be able to attend you and answer your query. But let's take an example here. You can see that we go back to the system of registry, as we mentioned, that the UN adopted. And after, starting in the 1970s, the UN began to gradually phase out the registry system. But you will find quite interesting at the beginning of the period, and also you will find non-registry archives that are available. Let's go to the first period of the registry of the UN. And if we want to consult a document on human rights, and especially on the Human Rights Covenant, we will be able to consult here some very interesting comments from government and feedback about the work of the Committee on Human Rights and the process of drafting this important covenant. Let's take this example. If I want to open it, I just have to accept the copyright notice, and I have access to this document. You can see that in that case, these archives were digitized from microfilms. And here, if we go to page 9, we have access to the Geneva draft of the Human Rights Declaration. I don't know if you want to say a word, Daniel?
Sure. So the famous Geneva draft is the first translation into French, and it was sent to Mr. Humphreys for his review. And as we scroll through, we can start to see some of the editing that is happening because there's marginalia and footnotes handwritten that if we compare this to the final draft that was approved, we can see the altered language that was used. Thank you, Edmund.
Thank you, Daniel. All right. Now, let's see what happens if we perform a simple search on the platform. Okay. When you will search some terms, the term will be searched in the metadata, the description of the files, and in the full text of the digitized document if they have been digitized. So let's try search a simple term as Einstein. Here is how is the presentation of the list of results. You can, of course, sort this result by title, relevance, or other options in descending, ascending way. You can also ask to have only the results with digital objects, if you want. And on the left side, you will see the facets to narrow down your search. For example, this part of facets allow you to search among one font. If we select the collection one, here is where you will find the photos, index cards, and also League of Nations official documents. To remove the selection, you just have to click here on the little cross, and you can take another fonts if you want, like the League of Nations Secretariat. You can see that we have quite a lot of results mentioning Einstein, since he was a member of the International Committee and the International Institute for Intellectual Cooperation. To finish the demonstration of the platform, let me show you that if you click here on the quick link icon, you can access the help section. You can watch a tutorial, but also you will find all the information on how to perform efficient searches on the platform. Finally, we also offer some tutorials on the League of Nations archives only for the moment, and you can always subscribe to our newsletter to stay updated. Now I'll hand over to Daniel, who will explain how we got there.
Thank you, Hermine. So this next section, we're going to look at the breaking down the barriers to access, and we've divided them into 5 major barriers. So financial, process, technical, physical, and informational barriers. So the first one is financial. We all know that archives are not the richest organizations in the world, and often we have to fight for funding within regular budgets, but also to get extra things happening like digitization. So Hermine said that the Lontad project was funded by a private donor here in Switzerland. And to make the archives like the League of Nations fully accessible requires major ongoing investment. It does not end with digitization. We had advocacy efforts that assisted us in doing so. So the UNESCO Memory of the World Register inclusion was a great leverage point to getting interested bodies in providing funds for digitization. We also spent a lot of time raising awareness with senior management within UNOG. There was lots of engagement with member states and with the public themselves. And it was a long, ongoing, overtime project that luckily in 2016 resulted in a major donation and that allowed us to undertake this project. And we were able to start the digitization project. The process barriers are that digitization, like I said, is more than scanning. So it is not just scanning, and if you've done that, then everything is accessible. There is preparation, there is the description once the archives have been scanned, and then there is indexing. So all of these processes are extremely time and resource intensive. The pre-digitization phase, which included the preparation of the materials, conservation and preservation work, as well as minor physical repairs that were needed. You can see one of the images of a document that was in a very poor state, and in order to be digitized, needs to be made stable. The digitization itself involved the scanning of all the documents and also applying OCR to enable full text search. And we had 5 or 6 full-time scanners working throughout this project. Post-digitization not only includes creating detailed descriptive archival descriptions, but it also included 100% quality control to ensure that every single piece of paper that is in the physical format was digitized and readable for the online versions. We also did a lot of indexing of the content, and then there's the managing and the long-term preservation of electronic files. We also, in the post-digitization, there was also a lot of choosing and implementing platforms. So the platform that Hermine demonstrated, the ACMS, so that the general public and ourselves could access the records, but then also the digital preservation system to ensure secure and long-term access to these archives. We don't want to have to return in 10 or 15 years' time to redigitize the 3 linear kilometers of League of Nations records. Another part that changed with the digitization is how we actually provide services to clients. With all things digital, we had to be and have to be more proactive when serving clients. It's different when clients come into the reading room and you can have a face-to-face reference interview before they actually get their fingers into the archives. With them being presented on a digital platform, the researcher can dive directly into the archives without having the wealth of knowledge that the archivist has, as well as getting contextual information. So what we've had to do is, like I said, be more proactive in how we serve clients. So we have chat features, we have the videos that were created. We also put forth, after initial contact, to have a reference interview online so that we can give the researchers the same type of service they would receive if they came physically into the reading room with us. Technical barriers were also something that we had to overcome, and this requires an extremely robust IT infrastructure, as well as long-term planning and long-term resource investment. We all know that it is more expensive to maintain electronic archives than it is to maintain physical archives. We also know that much more work is involved, active work from the archives and the archivist point of view, to keep those digital archives accessible and usable in the long term. We had access considerations. Different people are coming from different devices, coming from different parts of the world with different connectivity possibilities, and also different levels of digital literacy. For LONCTAD, the particular project, the file formats was all the same because it was all scanned at the same time. But we also had to look at accessibility standards in order to keep the archives accessible around the world. Now we are seeing that with the new collections that have been digitized and are being digitized, and the receipt of born digital records, we're starting to see a variety of different formats that will be soon ingested into the digital preservation platform. We've also done work to support the users. So this goes back to being proactive with the chats, having technical assistance when needed. And technical assistance is anything from how to use the platform to giving a more context-based reference interview for actually working into the records. And we've also done improvements based off of feedback. The most recent, and one that Hermine just demonstrated, is that now when you look for digital files in our platform, they are no longer downloaded, and they are actually opening up in a web browser, which sounds minute, but if you had to wait for a 500-page document to download over dodgy internet connection, you will understand that having it opened up in a web browser is much more advantageous. Hermine will take over for the last two barriers that we are looking at.
Thank you, Danielle. Yes, so digitization obviously helped break down physical barriers to access the archives. And it was not only on how many people now can use the archives, but also who is using them. Because of course, that means that people no longer have to travel to Geneva to do their research. Before the LONTAD project, more than 80% of our users were from Europe and the US, and we had only about 300 users a year. Of course, we know that travel costs and logistics were a big barrier for many researchers. But now our reach is really global, and we've had nearly 250,000 users and over 3 million page views today. And countries like China, India, Singapore are now among the top 10 users, which is something very new for us. Other kind of people are using the platform. And also that remote access proved to be very important during the COVID period when no one could travel. And also it continued to matter today, as our library and archives building will soon be under renovation and physical access for some collection will be limited. So digitization remained essential for continuing the research. So to get a better sense of how online access was working for researchers, we ran a user survey back in 2021 at the moment where we put online and on temporary platform some archives just before the official launch. And at that time, about a third of the users respond to the survey, and their feedback was very helpful. So they shared a few big advantages of the digitization, of course, no more travel, but also they could access much more of the collection without to pre-select any boxes. They can browse freely and come back to the document as often as needed. And that was something that was not possible on site. Also, they say that the online research was faster and easier thanks to the full text search. They could find names, keywords, and small details that they couldn't have been able to see seeing the archives physically. And of course, because now we have a high resolution scan, they don't need to take their photos during a visit. Most said that the platform was easy to use and practical, and they said that nearly or over half of them prefer now the online research, even though 60% still prefer in-person access. But we have a third category, nearly a quarter, that said that they would like to have both options, really, because they complement each other, not to look in the platform to use the advantage, but to have a sense of the materiality of the archives in the reading room, which is a very nice middle ground, but for the moment is not realistically possible. So that says, and Danielle mentioned it a little bit earlier also, even with the online access of the archives are still hard to navigate. So support is a very key in that part, and we can see that with the information barrier side. And here, other interesting takeaway of this survey is that nearly 90% of the researchers said that it was very helpful to speak with an archivist before starting their research. And like Daniel said, of course, before the relation was possible, the contact was possible in the reading room, but now that is not possible, it's still hard to understand the organization of the archives and all the technical part, as in very important to have a contact with an archivist, with a specialist. So if we go to the next slide. Based on this feedback we received is why we developed several new ways to support the researcher remotely. So here is a summary of what has been presented so far. So we offer now online training session to help people get started, along with a regular newsletter, which include also the first one is a special issue with tips and advice for navigating the archives. We have also created tutorial, research guide, and we offer interviews with archivists online, and so that users can get a sense of the collection and how to work with them. And for quick question, we have our live chat for real-time support. So we are doing our best to keep offering guidance for researchers that need to continue their work online, even if they are from the other side of the world. Now over to Daniel for the closing remarks.
Thank you, Hermine. So the work doesn't stop here. We have to continue to move forward, and these are a few of the items that are currently on our radar. First and foremost, sustainability always remains a concern, especially in today's budget and fiscal climate that the UN is going through. We have to have continued investment and innovation in order to keep the digital archives first of all, usable, and second of all, accessible. And as said before, the journey doesn't end with digitization. Access is an ever-evolving challenge, and we have to keep moving forward and keep making sure that these archives can remain accessible for the long term and for generations to come. We're also committed to bridging the remaining gaps and supporting users worldwide, which Edmund talked about. And then the last one is that this is bringing new opportunities, and there are new pathways for research that are coming out of having breaking down the barriers to the archives. So public history and education and crowdsourcing, hackathons, and also digital humanities partnerships. So we have to keep our finger on the pulse in order to be able to keep breaking down the barriers and keep records and archives being accessible. Thank you.
Super. Thank you so much, Danielle and Hermine. It's also very interesting to see that in all the ways that we work on accessibility, having the contact with and support from the archivists and the team is also very important for the users, and that's something to reflect on. We see a few hands clapping. Thank you for your responses there. There is time for questions, so you are welcome to ask in the Q&A, or you can raise your hand and we will call upon you. Of course, you're welcome to put in your camera and your microphone and ask your question verbally. We already have one in the chat, so maybe we will start with that. It's from Zara. So thank you, Zara. Do you have a written access policy shared with the public or users about restrictions or reasons for restrictions and how to get different permission for access? Any response there, either Hermine or Danielle?
So yes, we do. The UN has its law, SGB 2007-6, which dictates access classification as well as access to the records. In general, records and archives that are classified as unclassified and confidential are open 20 years after creation, and records that are classified as strictly confidential have to go through a declassification or access process. And Hermine, maybe you can speak towards the STSGB covering the League of Nations archives.
Yes, there is also a circular for the League of Nations archives that now give access to all the content of the League of Nations archives for several years now. So everything is available and has been digitized. However, the decision was taken not to add online the personal files of the staff of the League of Nations. They are available upon request. They could be available online, but the decision was taken to protect if there is people of the family still living, and we didn't want to put personal information online. But it's definitely available for consultation for research purpose.
Okay. Thank you both. And we hope that was helpful, Zara. If you have any other questions, please don't hesitate. You can raise your hand if you prefer to open your mic and your camera. While we're waiting, I did have a question myself based on the digital literacy that you mentioned. How was your experience when working on these accessibility issues, looking at access from a digital literacy point of view? So how things were presented or how you thought people would be able to access things virtually? Any reflections there?
Hermine, or I can take it if you want. So in general, we can probably all admit that gaining access to archives through the hierarchical distribution or breakdown that it is, so fonds, sous-fonds, series, etc., it does not come intuitively. And what we have been finding is that it not so much digital literacy on how to use the technology, but maybe how to, when one keyword searches, where it drops you directly into a document, you have to learn how to use the context to be able to understand how the creation of the record itself, but also what it actually means in the greater context of the archives. So then also there's the people who just are not digital literal at all and can't turn on their own computer. Then we have to overcome those barriers because access to the physical records have been limited since digitization.
Great. Thank you so much, Danielle. I don't see any more questions, but we also are aware of time and that the session has come to an end. If you don't have a question now, but you do have one later, do not worry. You can ask an archivist. We're going to send you the recording for this session, as well as a list of different links to know more about the library and archives, to see the demo, as well as to ask an archivist or a librarian if you have different types of questions. Before we go, we have one now from Romain, who says, thanks for the presentation. What would be the estimated quantity of archives remaining to be described? Hermine or Danielle?
Thank you, Romain. So for the UN archives, it would have to be probably 99% of it remaining to be digitized and to be described. Now, what we can offer is we have rudimentary inventory list. So when clients do come to us looking for access to the archives, it's not like we can't say what is in our collections. We just have a more back-end records management inventory list that we have to work off of. So it is coming, but we all know that it is a long and involved process.
Thank you. I see a thumbs up there, so I think that was Romain saying thanks as well. Fabulous. Okay. Great. So as we mentioned, if you do have any questions following the session, we're very happy to speak with you and interact with you. So you can also ask an archivist or email us. We'll give you the details after the session. But otherwise, we wish you a great International Archives Week next week. We hope you can engage in different discussions on the accessibility of archives, and we hope this was a useful session for you. Thank you, Danielle, Hermine, and Nivert, and thanks to you all for taking the time to be with us today. Hope to see you soon, and bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you to all. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.